Hi everyone, welcome to Unapologetically You with myself, Tuls, and the gorgeous Kelly. Now, today we are going to be talking about emotional stress. And if you've been following along with our episodes, we've been going through different versions of stress, right? So we've gone through physical, mental, we've gone through various things. So today is focusing on emotional stress. So if you haven't caught up on the previous podcast, I do recommend that you follow the description box down below, and it's got all the links for that. And there is going to be some crossover because I feel like sometimes emotional stress is going to manifest into physical and chemical, environmental, things like that. So all of the previous episodes are in the description box below. Feel free to hit subscribe and like if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, thank you so much for tuning in. And be sure to check us out on Patreon, where you can support both of us from as little as £5 a month, and we can continue to dedicate time, effort, energy into doing what we love on this podcast. So without further ado, let me introduce you to my beautiful co-host, Kelly. Hi.
Hello, my Tuls. How are you?
I'm good. It's raining here, and
Good.
it's raining over there too, right? So we're syncing.
It is raining over here.
With our weather.
Yeah, both having a little bit of a moan about it, but it is what it is, and we both live in beautiful places.
I like the rain. So basically, I've just come back from Portugal. No word of a lie, it's been stunning weather in the UK, and it was raining in Portugal.
Oh no.
I'm like, this almost never happens to us when we go on holiday, right? You expect sunshine, especially in such a beautiful country. But then I just embraced all the chaos. Like I embraced such crazy chaos. My environmental stress was we got charged extra at the airport, like stupid amount extra. We had to run for our flight. No, it was boarding pass issues. We had to then run to our flight because we were so delayed in security, like the security gate and blah, blah, blah. What do they call it? Like just going through security just took ages, which meant we had to run to the flight. I genuinely thought, I was like, we're going to miss it. We're going to have to pay for another flight and it's going to be extra. Finally got the last stragglers onto the plane, which was fantastic. I'm just like, oh my God, they didn't shut the gate. Like, because it literally was gate is closing. I was like, oh shit. And then my heels were hurting. I was like running in these awkward shoes I never hardly ever wear. Yeah. And then we finally got to the hotel. Bearing in mind, I'm the person who kind of fasts like up until noon. So I'm like, by the time we get there, I'll have something there. But I didn't carry a bottle of water with me. I'm like, this is such a bad story. Like, don't do this. I didn't have a bottle of water with me. I decided to meditate on the plane. So I didn't really want to eat or drink. By the time we got to Portugal, it was stunning. It was beautiful. But I was like, oh, my heels are really hurting. Took off my shoes. Blood showing. My mum's like, what? Blood in your shoes?
You didn't say blisters.
No, the blisters obviously got worse, and there was blood pouring out of my heels, and I didn't notice. I just thought it hurt. So then there's me not making a massive deal about it, just going, I'll just take off my shoes because they hurt a little bit. And my mum's like looking at my shoes going, what the hell has happened? And I was like, and then because we're sat in the sun actually having lunch, I was like, I don't feel so good. Had a massive headache coming on, and then decided to hurl all of my lunch because I was Kelly, your face is hilarious.
Oh my, because this is a holiday. This is your birthday holiday, right?
This is my birthday. This is my birthday. And I'm like, oh my God, if it's this shit today, what's gonna happen for the rest of the year? Like, oh well, all right.
Go on. Did the day get better?
I was fine after being sick. You know, when you're just like, you just spewed it all out, you're fine now.
Yeah, it's a reset.
Oh my gosh. And then the next day was pouring down with rain. So like, okay. The one thing I did realize is I want a sauna in my future house.
A sauna? Did you have a sauna there? Like an infrared one?
spa. So like there was sauna, there was pool, it wasn't an indoor pool, but yeah, there was stuff there, and we just chilled out. It was really nice to just chill out.
I love an infrared sauna.
Yeah.
Love them.
There's just something about it. And I was like doing my meditation in there, chilling with mum. Like it was so nice. It was so good.
Oh, your mum and dad went over as well? Or your mum?
Yeah, whole family. Yeah, it was my brother's birthday 2 days later. So I was like,
stop.
How do you celebrate a person, like celebrate something that whenever he wants something, he always gets it himself? So I'm like, well, what do you give that type
I know,
person?
really hard. Yeah.
So I'm just like, here's a gift. We're just going to go on holiday together. And
Portugal was a really good idea.
Yeah.
Well, in hindsight, after day one.
I know. There was something weird going on, honestly. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Such a weird, like, crazy time. But anyway, I guess that actually, because we're talking about emotional stress,
leads us into...
I didn't feel emotional stress. Like I felt there was a tug of war internally, but my reactions, like when we actually got on the plane, I was overwhelmed with gratitude because I was like, thank God we got on this plane. Like, thank you that we ended up catching the flight. And then I went into a moment of zen and I just tried to meditate for like 2 hours. And it worked. Like I meditated for 50 minutes and then I kind of opened my eyes and I went back into that meditation phase.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, I didn't complain about my heels to anybody. And it was only until my mum noticed my shoes that I was like, why didn't I react?
I think she noticed the blood.
Sorry?
You noticed the blood coming out of your shoes? Is that what you mean? She saw
it. I didn't even notice. All I did was take off my shoes. And I was just, why would I want to look on my feet? Right? I'm like, who is this?
No, I wouldn't either, I guess. You just take them off and that's that.
I was literally...
But mums do that. Yeah.
It's true. And I'm so glad that she looked after me because she was like, here's the tube. You can like obviously spread. And they were all scabby and stuff. So you need to make sure that they're healed right. And so part of me is like, why didn't I react? Like, this is a great time to be emotionally distressed, right?
Yes. Yeah. So why didn't you? Do you know why?
Because the thing is, okay, so stress is a normal reaction to pressures of everyday life, right? So pressures that I couldn't, we had to be charged extra. We kind of just made peace with it. We're like, what are we going to do? Running to the flight, got the flight, ended up in gratitude when I was on the flight, sat down, didn't realize anything but pain. So there's blood. All right, what are you going to do? So, and then I was like, I had a massive headache. Okay, tried to lie down. That didn't work. Puked up. Fine after. What are you going to do? So part of me is like, this is all stress. This is physical manifestations of stress, right? It was like heart rate increasing, blood pressure increasing, all of these things that physiologically causing a stress. But emotionally, there was no sign of panic, sadness, distress. So I'm just like, well, wait a second. So does stress activate your emotions or does your brain trigger an emotional response?
There would be an actual academic answer for that, Tuls, and we should look that up rather than surmise an answer.
Because the thing is, if we think about, so I said I meditated on the plane, right? Mindfulness meditation includes breath work, right? It's being aware of your body, your brain, depending upon how you're doing mindfulness or meditation. So if you use breath work as being a strategy, it helps us tackle our own triggers, our emotions to stress. So why does one person freak out when they're given, I don't know, let's just take an example. If you're given a letter ending your contract, or you're in a meeting where you're told you're fired, right? And another person analyzes this information and the logical part of their brain looks for future opportunities. So stress affects everyone differently, right?
Yeah.
And I know that from my little bit of research, Dr. Borland suggested that there are two major symptoms of emotional stress: poor concentration skills and difficulty remembering things. So if you notice feelings of anger, grief, sadness, anxiety, even, all of these are signals that your stress is higher than usual, right? So depending upon your stress trigger, emotional stress can be acute or prolonged. So acute emotional stress can be, I don't know, waiting for the doctor to give you test results. Like that can be quite stressful, right? Or prolonged stress could be working in a hostile work environment, right? Something that you know you have to go to, but it's constantly giving you stress. So that episode stress, emotional stress, can occur every time the individual is placed in a specific situation.
Yeah.
But do you see how these descriptions of emotional stress can cause distress?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just tips over into that distress, because there's positive stress, there's eustress, EU stress, there's distress. So yeah, as soon as that stress level tips your cup over, it becomes distress, right? So you've certainly, on that day of blood and vomit, you certainly had enough to tip your cup over into distress, but you didn't. So what do you think? Do you have any idea what kept you calm? Was it your physical health? Because it can. Physical health can definitely impact your emotional health positively. So physical health, or just was everything else in check? And like you said, so paying more at the airport could have been a financial stress, but you made your peace with it. And you went, okay, it might not have been ideal, it might not have been what I expected, but I've had strategies in place so that if something like this comes along, I can actually deal with it. So it comes out of the kitty, I'm at peace with it. My life is still good. So that financial kind part of it was ticked off. Physical, definitely, you're physically fit. So that part of it, like your heart rate probably went up, but not too high to stop you tipping over. Yeah. Mental stress, well, it was definitely a mental stress, but you obviously had that in check because you went into meditation mode as well. That would have helped. But here's me just surmising. So what do you think? What do you feel stopped you just tipping over? Would you have at some stage of your life just had a little mini meltdown and just gone, I'm just not even going to try and catch this plane? Or
I definitely think that, because just before we hit record and we were in the green room, Kelly and I, we talked about my history of depression and suicidal thoughts even, and family suicide that I'd experienced from a young age. So I think for me, I haven't always been this way. And standing back, looking at the whole day, even in the day. So at the end of the day, I was like, why did I react that way? Just because I'm such a big person I'm such a big reflective person, right? So I reflect all the time. And for me, I just wanted to kind of stand back and go, why did that happen? And I definitely feel like there's a change within me. So the circumstances were highly unusual. They hadn't happened in that sequence of events before, but they happen, right? They're life. So I think that what you depicted as financial, emotional, physical, things like that, environmental, all of these things had accumulated within this day, but my reaction to it was different. I feel like it was because it was outside of me.
okay.
So if things were happening outside of me, I know I said it was physiologically, it was stressful as well, and things were happening to me. I feel like they were beyond my control. And because I was looking outside of myself and those situations were beyond my control, as you said, I made peace with them. because there was nothing I could do about them. So before, years ago, I probably would have had a bit more of a mental breakdown regarding the finance side of things or the pain in my body. And now I think my mentality might have just been, there's a reason for this. And I know it sounds like kind of outlandish of, yeah, it's a bit, wait a second, why would you think that there's a reason to this? And I'm like, there has to be a reason for everything. And I'm definitely a firm believer of we create our own reality, right? So I'm just thinking, well, were these series of challenges presented in front of me to understand, for me to understand how far I've come in my emotional, physical, mental journey?
Guess so. Yeah, it was testing day.
Oh my gosh, yeah, like S&C speak. Testing
Yes,
does push you, right? It's just to see where your
yes,
limits are and how
you're at.
we adjust our program to suit the athlete or the team.
Yeah. And so did you pick up any, I mean, you didn't really, you went into meditation mode, you didn't freak out about having blood in your shoes and scratchy heels. Then you, I don't know, you just dealt with everything. But is there anything you afterwards kind of went, I could have meditated a little bit better, I could have
Oh,
picked better shoes?
definitely. I think I definitely thought I could have meditated better because there were so many
Okay.
distractions, but I knew a couple of days before I said this to, I think I might have said it to my brother. We were having a conversation and I said, I'm the type of person who works, who likes silence when I like focused work, right? And I do a lot of creativity and, content creation and things like that for my social media and my online training platform. So I like bouts of concentration. But within that concentration, I can have very subtle music. Like I'm not talking about coffee shop music, like very subtle, like almost subliminal, like tones, right?
Yeah.
But if there are certain distractions, so like if I was in an office space, I would get distracted. Like I find it really hard to regain my focus. So I said to my brother the other day, I was like, maybe I should meditate or try and meditate when there are distractions. Because when you're in that volatile environment, could you hone in your focus?
Yeah, hard,
To be that
hard.
way, right? And I feel like that probably tested me in the airplane where like you've got the pilot and the flight attendant speaking to you, then you've got your obviously next door neighbor getting up and down and blah blah blah. Whereas I'm just like, well, it is what I had my headphones in, but they weren't
Mhm.
completely silencing everything around me. But I just feel like meditation, like again, we spoke about this before we hit record, it's a very much a purging of old triggers, emotions, current triggers, environmental stresses. It's not a case of, oh, I've come out of meditation and it's all butterflies and rainbows and so lovely. Like that's in a blue moon that happens, right?
Oh, I wish. But yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's more a case of I meditate. So I know the meditation is working because it's helping me cope with the environmental and the emotional stresses that I would have probably freaked out about before. But let's go
Yes.
back to, say, the physical manifestation. So if we think about the physiological manifestations of stress,
Mhm.
they relate to emotional stress, right? So we're talking about depression, we're talking about anxiety, irritability, low sex drive. And as I mentioned above, we have memory and concentration problems. So then we've got compulsive behavior and mood swings. So things that are beyond what we feel beyond our control, it's happening to us, right? But
Yes.
if I break this down into more specific examples, so our audience can kind of get my train of thought. If you may have feelings of overwhelm, helplessness, hopelessness, you may feel guilty without clear cause, like me, who might have spent a lot of time worrying, right? Just in constant worry or fear or anxiety. Maybe you're
Yep.
sleeping too much or too little, or you're fatigued in general. There are times where you might experience changes in appetite, that you might rely on mood altering substances like alcohol, isolating yourself from people or activities at times. You're feeling that your daily tasks are burdensome more than usual, or you're experiencing new and unexplained pain. Are there any ones in there that you can identify with in terms of physiological and emotional stress there, Cal?
Personally, as in it has, I could relate to, is that what you're asking? Have I? Yeah. Okay, so sleeping too much sometimes, or feeling fatigued and going to sleep, but sleeping too much is akin to isolating yourself as well.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like you can justify the isolation by sleeping. And I would do that at times. I would say, I'm so tired, I need to sleep. And really it's I need time out, or I'm trying to give myself that breather. But I know there's also sleeping too much is related to depressive episodes. And that doesn't mean depression necessarily, but depressive episodes. I have an aunt who feels, she's so delicate. She feels pain. She's so sensitive to pain. She's had a, I think I can say this. I haven't asked her if I can, but her story is that she was adopted into our family. And she's from an Indigenous background. So when she was a little girl, when she was a baby, she was adopted into a white family, a white wealthy family, and led a lifestyle totally different to what she would have had had she stayed with the family that she was born into. And yet, as a little Indigenous girl, there was racism. She experienced racism. It's called racism now. Back then, I guess it was just bullying or being left out of things. Yeah. So she has always told, you know how American Indians and Australian Aboriginals have such a connection to the earth. And so she had a connection to the earth that she just didn't, she knew she was missing something, but she knew what it was. Growing up with white people who do not necessarily have this amazing connection to the earth and the spirit world and everything that is, all around us, we're quite, if you can't touch it, it doesn't exist, but she had this feeling that there was always something more, and she didn't know what it was and had no one to guide her to what it could possibly be. And so the pain that she felt in having this gap made her so sensitive to every other kind of pain. So physical pain, she's had a knee surgery, but beyond the knee surgery, even now, you can't touch the scar, you can't touch the skin around it. And there's no medical reason, because we've had scans and I do rehab, and, there's no medical or physical reason that we can pick up on a scan where it should be that sensitive. Her ears are very sensitive. You can't touch her. She can touch her own ear, but if you go even to reach for it, she'll, jump a mile. So many little things like that. So many little things that she's overly sensitive to touch and pain. And so she's my example of, being oversensitive to everything, to emotion, to finance, to environmental, to physical pain, to mental pain. And so she withdraws. That's one of her go-tos. She did, in the end, find her family. She did reunite with the family that she was born into. A lot of them had, in Australia, there's a lot of Indigenous people who are imprisoned. And all of her brothers had been imprisoned. Some of them had died in jail. Some of them had committed suicide. It was a big family. And she found one sister and has connected to them and really found that piece of her heart that was missing. I'm sure there's still unexplained, pain there, but a big piece of it was filled. And so, gosh, that's just one example of one person in this world. There would be so many with similar stories, right? And not knowing why they were feeling empty, or because, like I said, she grew up in a white, wealthy family and wanted for nothing, but didn't want anything she had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's
So
a
that's
really interesting story. Thank you so much for sharing that, and I hope she's okay with us sharing that.
I hope so too. I'll let her know, but I don't think she's not on Instagram, so she's not on social media.
But I think the
She will.
thing is, you raise a really good point there, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that story, because I think the overall conclusion is that events, the individual, the environment, our hormones, it all depends upon our reaction to the type of emotional stress that we encounter, and also what we've been traumatized or hidden, what we're hiding. And I think it's really hard to quantify what causes emotional stress and how individuals manage this. But I think that
Yes.
leading on to the next part of our podcast is there are suggestions that can help the process of emotional stress so it doesn't become oppressive, right? Because it can be debilitating in certain situations. And as you so rightly gave a beautiful example of people's whole circumstances, whole perception of things, and how they interact with individuals changes based on their emotional environmental stress. So I think that I was looking into, ways that we can support one another in emotional stress. And I know that I've talked about meditation and mindfulness, that I think is a key thing. And it's like a silver lining throughout whatever we talk about. But I think that there's been evidence of Tai Chi, yoga, general exercise, even removing individuals or situations like changing jobs, if that is the cause of your stress. Now, I know a lot of people are like, oh, I can't change my job. I can't do this. I need to provide for a family. Yes, we're not saying quit your job tomorrow, but what you can do is put in place a contingency plan, right? If something's causing you that much stress, is it really worth your health and well-being to provide for your family? Because there are other jobs out there. There are other jobs out there, right? You can get paid for other things, and it's something that cultivates your emotional and physical well-being. And I think that keeping in mind that what affects you will affect other people differently. What you deem, especially with me, what I deemed stressful 3 years ago is completely different to how I deem and perceive stress now. And I think that you do build up that resilience, and we're going to learn from previous life experiences. We have to put in boundaries and prevent those situations from happening again, right? We're learning from them. And do you find that you've done something similar, Cal? What are your go-to ways to reduce or eliminate emotional stress? I know that you spoke about, you might have felt like you needed to sleep, but how do you eliminate emotional stress when it shows up for you? Is exercise the go-to? Is going out to the water your go-to?
Different things at different times of my life. Exercise has certainly been one of them at times. But for me, I'm realizing, because I'm working more with people who have neural disorders, and when you have a neural disorder, reducing a stimulus reduces the stress. So I realize that I know this because I did this, okay, but I'm only now being able to put it into words. So reducing stimulation, as in reducing, if I went to sleep, I was reducing the visual stimulus and I was reducing audible stimulus, okay, but then I would sort of go to sleep, or I would just more meditate where there was an audible stimulus, but I would take away the visual stimulus, and I wasn't actually sleeping, I was learning to meditate. Gosh, that took me years, but learning to meditate. And so definitely adding a stimulus in, like exercise, was something that I did do. but didn't work for me as well as reducing a stimulus. Have I explained that well enough?
Sure, I love that. It depends upon the situation and the environment, but also
Yep.
you don't have to add in a stimulus. You can focus on taking away the stimulus. And I love that comparison between, yes, if you're feeling emotionally stressed, exercise may work for you, but it could also mean that you need to take away stimulus like auditory, visual, physical, things like that. So you might need to have that state of quiet, isolation, contemplation. And for some people, that works. And I feel like that is a great example. Just how we've explained emotional stress varies with everybody.
Yep.
The response to that and the stimulation or the lack of stimulation will actually depend upon the person. Okay, so here's another question for you, Cal.
Okay.
If you are able to deal with your emotional stress, how do you deal with a family member or a work colleague's emotional stress? So when we live with people, we tend to steer clear if they're having a moment where they get angry, or you're like, oh my God, they're hungry, so they're feeling a little bit hangry. They begin to isolate themselves. So you are aware of these things because you're invested in them, right? You know their traits and their inequalities, qualities. How do you deal with others who are dealing with emotional distress?
I find most people know the answer and they just need to verbalize it. They need to talk. You can ask strategic questions, but listening is your job.
Yeah.
So I think at some stage they will say the answer and you've just got to go, you knew it all along. You knew it. So, I guess there's strategic questions that you can answer. They're different for different circumstances and different for different people. And don't just sort of launch into asking questions. Listen for a long, long time. Because this is what I learned in rehab, Tuls. If you listen to the way people describe their injury or the way they're feeling, they nail it 100% of the time. So if they say it feels like it pulls or it feels like it's stuck, and I go, well, it is pulling and you are stuck. So those words are so descriptive of the way someone's emotionally stuck or physically stuck. Like stuck is such a word that I look for in the way people describe how they're feeling. And I don't ask people how they're feeling referring back to my work. I don't ask people how they're feeling physically. I don't necessarily put any limits on them being able to describe how they feel. It can be, they can add emotional stuff in. We build relationships. It's very much a part of my job. So they know they can have a gripe about their partner if they want to. They know I'm a volt, absolute volt, except for telling you about my auntie. But everything else, it goes nowhere. So they can tell me how their emotional or romantic life is. They can tell me about any financial issues. But they don't know that's the answer before they say it.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is you're creating a space where they can be vulnerable, but that also tags into, I'm reading currently Brené Brown's new book, Atlas of the Heart, and it's very, very different to what she's done before. Like, this is only the first book I've read of hers, but I've listened to her a lot and I've read articles, but this one in particular focuses on emotions and the amount of emotions that we actually have as human beings. But I feel like the most important thing that I'm taking away from it is it's almost like a dictionary. She's going through different emotions, what they actually mean, and what their evidence states they are. But right at the beginning, what she says is very true. Is right at the beginning, people I have, and she's done research on this, people identify their emotions as happy, sad, angry, and they're very, very limited. And what she encourages is saying these are the breadth of emotions you do feel. So if you're happy, what type of happy are you? Are you blissful?
Right.
Are you joyous? Are you ecstatic? Are you elated? There are so many different versions that we're not enabling ourselves to tap into. We're not vocalizing this. So when it comes to somebody who's in distress, remember we talked about memory and attention and concentration. If you're under emotional distress, you're probably limiting yourself back to the conditions that you're unable to express yourself clearly. And then you're feeling that stuckness because you're trying to verbalize it, but you're limited in your vocabulary. But let's expand this. Let's be more reflective in ourselves. Let's be more auditory in what we're trying to explain and find that safe space where you can verbalize it, because a lot of times people verbalize it and then they get dismissed or they don't get heard, and it makes them retreat even more, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And when you were saying about Brene Brown saying about the range of emotions, and there's versions of happiness, how many times have you heard someone say, I'm happy but, or I'm happy for them? But the answer is, I'm happy but I'm jealous, or I'm happy but I'm scared. I'm happy, but I'm scared of what. I'm happy to be engaged, but I'm scared of being married. I'm scared of being with this one person for the rest of my life. I'm happy for them, but I'm jealous of what they've got. And where did I read this? I do believe I was told it rather than read it. Every human emotion, the root of every human emotion is fear. So I'm happy, but I'm fearful. I'm joyous, but there's a fear in there somewhere. If you dig deep enough, I think there is. But you are allowed to be happy and joyous and blissful without being fearful. It's just,
you need to get there. You need to dig deeper and
yes, you need to get there.
Yeah, not necessarily get rid of the fear. You can just be aware of the fear.
Acknowledge it. Acknowledge it, pop it aside, kick it into space, and go, hey, I don't even know why I'm fearful of that. I mean, that's such a ridiculous, it might not be ridiculous, but it might be, exactly. It might be something you go, what? I didn't even know that about me.
Yeah, exactly. And as I mentioned earlier, it's about building that resilience. If we're able to touch back on a subject that, how do we build that emotional resilience? How do we, instead of waiting for the proverbial shit to hit the fan, where we have no choice in a situation, I guess the key is dig deeper on how you identify and deal with stress. How do you deal with pressure? Resilience isn't just the ability to bounce back, but to adapt in the face of a challenging circumstance or event. So we're maintaining a stable mental state regarding your personal well-being. So how can we put all of these tools in place where when a day like my birthday occurred, that it doesn't cause you such emotional or physical distress? There was elements of that, but I think that if my emotional stress had been heightened, my physical stress might have been a little bit more worse, even though it was quite bad. Like I said, it could have been with emotional stress, right? I could have made myself worse because of that. But I think that the changes in lifestyle, like for me in particular, like developing my own interests, my hobbies, how to find ways to remove the stress and pressure by doing things that you enjoy more, connecting with others who resonate with the same hobby, build that community. What do you suggest in terms of lifestyle change? Like people who are in a job that they absolutely hate and is causing them distress because they are being bullied day in, day out. What do you suggest about your own lifestyle change?
Look, if I go back further than my recent lifestyle change, I have been in jobs that were stressful to me. I didn't hate them; they were just stressful to me. There were so many little elements of it that created a bigger stress. So I ended up getting headaches, and I just had that pit of my stomach. I don't want to go here. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this type of thing. And this is when I studied law, right? And I had a job out of study. So it was the people, really, and the environment, the culture. It was the culture that didn't suit me. So what I did was really get a handle on my finances so that I could take some time out to decide whether I wanted to study again or just get another job within that same field. And ultimately, as we all know, I studied again and got a job in another field. But I had that financial side of it. I wasn't rich, but I was secure enough that I could do that. And I felt like it was freedom because I didn't have to be there anymore. And then it was kind of like I chose to be there because it was building my freedom. I choose to come here because it's building my freedom, and I choose to be here today again because it's building this freedom for me. So then the job became a little bit easier to bear. I still didn't love the culture, but I just had a higher reason for being there. And then coming to my more recent lifestyle change, which was leaving a place I loved to live in, the Blue Mountains, but where I was working very long hours with a lot of different people, that started to affect me. I was indulging myself too much in their lives, their problems, their physical problems. And then, like I said, you build relationships and you encourage people to tell you what their problems are, but I wasn't trained not to take that on. So I think as a therapist or a counsellor, you do learn not to take that on, and I never learned not to take that on. So I became very burnt out. And then when COVID happened and we were all in lockdown, and work stopped for a little bit because we didn't know how long it was going to be. So work stopped for a little bit and I could just breathe. And I went, all right, I actually don't want to go back to the way it was. So I started doing online stuff. Some people didn't care to do online stuff. And I went, beautiful. I will put you in touch with someone else who can do the same job for you. So my clientele dropped by about half. A little bit less than half, but it was great. And then as COVID went on and on for, a year, and then there was a little bit of a break where we went back and tried to go assimilate back into the way we were, and then it all happened again with the second wave. We decided to move up to Kingscliff, so I don't know how many kilometres away, 8 hours up the coast. So we live beside the beach now. It's a different lifestyle. I don't have any face-to-face clients. And I choose my hours. So I've taken on no new clients. And I feel, how do I feel? I feel again like I'm building that freedom. Like when I went back to that first job and I could do this because I was building a freedom, that's how I feel here. I feel like I'm building freedom, and I needed it. I really did need it. I was so tired. I was so burnt out, and you knew that. Yeah. But this feels, freedom is the word, Tuls. I think,
you feel like you feel liberated, like it's almost like that sense of burden has just dropped off your shoulders.
And yet I didn't know it was a burden. I would never have described any of my clients as a burden, but the way I wore it was a yoke.
Yeah.
So, and it was my own fault. No one else's fault but my own. And I needed to get myself out of it. But I am the personality that will let myself down before I let someone else down. So I was never going to tell these people that I couldn't be available for them 24 hours a day, which I sometimes am still, sometimes, and that's okay because it's not that many people now. And I do some other things now. So I work with you, and that's awesome. And I work with, well, it's looking like Summer Paralympics now as well, which is great because it's a new sport. So I'm learning. I'm doing a lot of learning things, actually, learning new things. And that to me is like taking a stimulus out. So if I can isolate myself in learning, that is a time when I'm not hearing everything. I'm not seeing anything other than what I'm focused on. Kind of like you, I don't. What's that?
I don't know.
You hear that, Tuls? My phone.
What can you hear?
I have no idea.
I'm really curious now.
Me too.
Oh, I can hear it now. It's like a ringtone, right?
Oh, could you not hear it? It's coming straight through my speaker.
I can hear it now. It's like it's oh, what do I call it? It's like a Skype call or something.
Yes. Well, there's nothing coming up on my computer. Angels calling. I don't know how to even stop it.
It comes in and out. I barely hear it, but I can hear it every now and
Really?
then. Yeah,
It's
it's a
non-stop
constant
for
for
me.
you. Angels.
I can't stop it. I don't know. Oh, now it's stopped. Nothing came up on the screen. Nothing came up on the phone. That was just coming through my speakers.
Okay.
Yeah. So what about you?
I feel like my lifestyle is completely different, especially I think COVID has changed a lot of people's lifestyle.
For
If they
sure.
wanted to or not, they were forced into this environment where they had to change and they were given different stresses, right? And so obviously all these episodes that we've been conversing with, different stresses of environment, of chemical, physical, emotional, I feel like it was forced upon us. And just like you, I was in a role which I did love. I did love, but there were certain stresses that were beyond me, and then they affected me physically, mentally, emotionally. So I feel like going into COVID, where again, I was the same. I took online clients and I started building my business, Fitness Chicks, and I started to do more things I loved. I think when I first started in the fitness industry and then I transitioned into strength and conditioning, it was always about learning. I was always learning and I loved it. I did. But if somebody would speak to me about my hobbies or interests, I had none. And
Right.
I felt like I wasn't an interesting person because the only thing I knew was fitness, was physiology, was, all these things. And there's a lot to learn when it comes to our industry. But
Yep.
the caveat is it's incredibly boring to always talk about your work, especially for people in different environments, right? So I think that being in COVID has enabled me to tap into what I want, what I value, and also do things that I enjoy more of. Like I've picked up painting recently again. And yeah, it's like I want to listen to more podcasts and I'm learning about space and all these different things that I'm genuinely interested about, but I don't know what to do with because it's just an interest or a hobby. And then I get to, like I'm such a big Marvel fan that I binge watched all the Marvel movies like last year and I caught up, and then I've got more to talk about um with my brother and with his friends, and the people that I resonate with, that they've got things in common. I like cars, I like Formula One and all these different things. It's like there's more to me than my job, and I feel like
Yes.
I made my job my life, and that's fine, but I didn't feel like I was an interesting person. So it was like,
No, right?
how do I change my lifestyle? And obviously the changes with my training hasn't stopped. I've adopted more yogic exercise sessions. I'm more into meditation. I'm more into, just finding my own inner bliss. And I feel like that has definitely helped the reactions and perceptions of emotional stress. And I feel like that's definitely built up my resilience as well. And it's funny because you mentioned about sleep earlier. And I feel like if we're looking after our physical and mental health, like sleep, nutrition, exercise, that has to be the biggest foundation that people take advantage of. Because if you think about it, back in the day, I know the narrative is shifting now, but they say sleep is sleep when you die, or
Yeah, I know.
keep grinding and things like that. And people forget that even when they're under stress, that the first things to go is your personal your sleep hygiene, your physical activity, and those are an outlet of stress, right? When you sleep, your body's recovering, your neurological signals, you're eradicating crap out of the day that your brain doesn't need. Like there's a process of sleep. It's so scientific that even scientists don't have the full answer of why we sleep and for how long we sleep. But it's almost like, are we eating well? Are we eating a rainbow of foods and fruit and veg that will keep us focused and energetic and more resilient? Because if you set that precedence, that outside world will try and rattle you. But if you've got those foundations, you're on a solid base. Is there anything else that you want to add to that? Sleep, nutrition, and exercise. Would you add anything to that foundation?
There are always little branches of it, but I would say that's the trunk of the tree. I think if you go back and look after those three, then other little things will pop up. But no, I think look after those three first.
Yeah. And if we were to go another branch or another tier, I reckon be more compassionate to yourself, especially when we're going.
Oh my gosh. Just be kind.
Yeah.
We always say be kind to each other, be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Forgiving yourself, I think, is the big thing. When you make a mistake, oh my gosh, I was so harsh on myself when I even made a mistake a couple of years ago. I'm like editing and I'm like, oh, where the hell did I do that? Why did I send that? And I'm like, look, we're in a world where there's so much pressure to act perfect, to look perfect, to be Instagrammable, to be perfect. And we remind ourselves that we're not, and that's okay. We're not Instagram. We're not showing ourselves in the highlight reel. We're living outside of that, and that isn't reality. Like I was on a community call full of yogis, and I'm looking at everybody's bodies and they're different. And I was so grateful that I was able to, like, all the cameras are all over the place, right? When you're trying to do yoga and you're trying to set up your own camera, it's not ideal. So not only did I see different women's body parts, like they were all dressed, but it was like I'm seeing different women's body parts. I'm seeing them do the yoga positions in the way they needed to do the yoga positions. So it wasn't Instagrammable. It wasn't perfect, but I'm so glad I saw that, because everything I'm seeing online is, oh, I need to be perfect, or I need to do that, and it needs to look like this, right? But we're doing it for ourselves, and we're judging ourselves on what other people should look like. But that community call reminded me of that's reality. We're not being pinched and photoshopped and manipulated into certain yogic positions that look amazing. It's messy. You're right. We're going to face stressful situations. We're going to face things that are uncertain. Reality is messy, right? So how do we forgive ourselves that much more and remind ourselves that this is a highlight reel, this isn't reality, and putting ourselves in situations which are real? I think that you can kind of end up going a little bit outside of your reality and thinking, well, this is what I want, or this is what I need, and this is what I need to look like. And you feel drained because you're trying to fight to that.
It can get exhausting. You know what? I think in the end, you find your people. If you're around people who, do try to filter you, if you're in their photos, then they're not your people.
But have you noticed though, people only post photos and they don't care, or they won't look at you. They'll only look
at I know only about what they look like.
Yeah. Yes. So even then you have to make peace with, well, I look a bit questionable in that photo, but they look amazing. And
I know.
Again, that's out of your control because it's their perception of things. And also, have you noticed, and I said this to a friend a couple of years ago, I said, don't delete photos. So if you're going to take loads and loads of photos and you're deliberating, don't look back on the photos that you've just taken to delete them. Leave it for a day or two or a week, then go back, and then you'll be surprised about your perception of what that photo looks like. Because at the time, you're going to be like, oh, don't like that, don't like that. Leave it a week. I guarantee you're going to see yourself differently, because it's like with everything. We look back on ourselves 10 years and like, I wasn't that fat. I wasn't that ugly. I wasn't this. We lay into ourselves.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And, I do believe social media has probably heightened that or made it more worldwide. But I certainly know my nana, when I was a little girl, my nana would say, oh, don't show everyone that photo, or I don't want any photos of me up around the house. She's talking about herself. I don't want photos of me up around the house. Put one of you up or something. And so, you know, it's always been there, that self-deprecating, unkind, put down. It's almost like you put yourself down before someone else can. It's like, reach to it.
Yeah, you call it out. It's like, I think we mentioned this in another podcast where you said, I'm going to point this floor out so you don't look at it later. But it's like, I would never have noticed it if you didn't point it out.
I know. And let's just, make this an example. When we first jumped on to talk to each other, I had just come back from paddling. My hair was wet and I thought I was a little bit early, so I'm madly sitting here with a hairdryer on my head. And you, anyway, it was still wet by the time it started. And I went, oh, Tuls, we're about to start now. This is as good as my hair's going to get. And you went, I love it. And I went, and that's exactly, and you were so adamant that you loved it. And it kind of, I'm like, I love it now too. But just because you were so kind about it, right? And you were so, you weren't faking it.
No, and I think that you're so harsh on yourself that sometimes you need somebody outside of you to remind you of your special qualities. And this really goes hand in hand. We didn't make this up, anybody, but this goes hand in hand to the last beautiful tool that we all have at our disposal, is building a support network. There is no shortage of support if you really look and ask for it, right? Your family, your friends, your peers, websites, organizations, health professionals, all of these people can assist you in your emotional stress. And I wanted to just talk about the groups that we've got available, right? We've got the Facebook group for strength and conditioning. We've got the Fitness Chicks community online on Facebook and on Instagram. We've got the Women in Sport. Like, how do we look after one another, that if we see things from our levels of perception, we need somebody else to just draw us out into the bigger picture, right? We're not focusing on this minute circumstance, but we can actually look outside of ourselves and just go, it's not about, bigging each other's ego up. That's not it. It's basically just going, what do you need at this time? Do you need a listening ear? Do you need support? Do you need advice about this program? Do you need, a go-to regarding job postings? It could be something as, there are no jobs out for me. I'm unhappy in my role, but I need support because I don't have, that avenue of where to go and find the perfect job for me. And all those things, it comes together if you've got that support network, I feel.
Absolutely. I always encourage my clients to build Team Kelly, for example. If I was injured and I came to, poor example, I guess, but if I came to me and I went, all right, so you need a physiotherapist, and we're going to find the one that suits you, and you need rehab, which is me, and then you need someone to do your hair. So you can get your special hairdresser, but it becomes your team of professionals, and certainly friends and even acquaintances or networks, like you say, become part of that team as well. So your network, I love reading the posts you put up on Facebook for your hybrid women's, what is it, Tuls?
Hybrid performance for female leaders.
Hybrid performance.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful. I'll put the link in the description box below if anybody wants to join. It's free to join. And it's basically just getting like-minded women who are, A-types, high achievers, quite critical of themselves, but want to achieve more, trying to find tools within strength, conditioning, mobility, mindfulness, all of these things that can enhance your lifestyle. And as we said earlier, one thing could work with one person, another thing may resonate with another person. So, that group at least gives you a plethora of articles, videos, suggestions that you can maybe pick up on something, or you may even pass to your girlfriend or,
Exactly.
an aunt or a cousin, whatever it may be. It's something that you can help each other with, and that's where that community network comes in, right? It's not just how you can help yourself, but how you can help the other women around you and come together.
Yes, absolutely. I love that.
That's a good way to round up, don't you?
I do. It's a nice spot to end in.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And don't forget, if you aren't already subscribed, hit that subscribe and notification bell so you can see more content like this on our YouTube channel. Same on Spotify. If you want to support us, again, there's a link below for Patreon, so hit us up on that. And you only need to pay for a price of cup of coffee to support us. So show us your support. We would love to have you on board Patreon.
Yes.
You'll see some of our green room chats on there as well. So you get a little bit extra than you would on normal.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Some of those chats are pretty
Remembering to like hit record. But Kelly, it's been a pleasure. I absolutely loved having a conversation with you about who would have thought all of this emotional distress and stress came up for us as examples. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Kel, thanks so much.
Thank you, T. As always, I love talking with you. It's usually at the end of my day that we do the chat, so sometimes I'm a little bit tired, but I always end up wired and with so many things to think about. And I never want to say goodbye, to be honest, but I know we just have to organise a chat where we just chat and laugh.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you guys are on Patreon, you'll be able to see all of this. So
that's true.
We'll see you on the next one.
Bye-bye.